Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. Today, continuing our Road to Eternal weekend to play all the best decks over the next few weeks, I'm now playing what many people regard as the second best deck in Legacy right now, which is Eldrazi. This is the de facto best aggro deck in the format as well. It's a nice big stompy mess of terrifying colourless monsters. So Eldrazi's been around for a while, using things like Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin alongside Ancient Tomb to power out some good creatures. Now, Modern Horizons gave us more of those creatures. So we have Glaring Fleshraker, which can just ping our opponent down. It gives us lots of additional mana just for playing spells. It can give us an army of 0/1s that can then become an army of 1/2s. It's an incredible card that gets through like a lot of shields your opponent can put up, because you don't even need the combat step to win with this. Especially when you are throwing things like Kozilek's Command out there. If you've got this and Eye of Ugin, you can just chain this into other copies with a Fleshraker in play and drain your opponent out. So very powerful. Thought-Knot Seer is the only one of the classic Eldrazi we have. A nice bit of hand disruption and a big body. Sowing Mycospawn is another new one that is pretty busto and feels really strong. So usually you're playing this for 4 mana and getting either a Soul Land or a Wasteland to disrupt your opponent. But sometimes in this particular list we can go and get something like a Maze of Ith or even a Blast Zone to try and disrupt our opponent in other ways. As well as just, getting our big mana going. And once we start kicking this, we can be taking 2 of our opponent's lands out from underneath them, and that's going to be lights out most of the time. The reason this deck is running Chalice of the Void, you see a lot of Stompy decks, especially the red Stompy decks, where they've moved on to Vexing Bauble now. But the reason why I like Chalice of the Void in Eldrazi right now is because what is the Eldrazi deck trying to do? It's trying to beat your opponent down with a bunch of creatures in quick fashion, right? So what we want to do is we want to block very specific things. We want to block things like Swords to Plowshares and Fatal Push. That sort of thing is what we're trying to hit with the Chalice here. We're not expecting this to last forever. Lots of decks have got ways of getting around it, like Prismatic Ending and stuff like that. But that's a whole turn our opponent spends removing this when our creatures are beating them down. And just having this so they can't remove our creatures is really strong. It's a speed bump. It's not a prison piece, if that makes sense. We also have another artifact in here that's well worth looking at, the One Ring. We've got a bunch of fast mana with Lotus Petals and Ancient Tombs that can contribute towards the One Ring. So why not have this in there and draw some extra cards? Seems like a very solid one that a lot of lists have adopted a couple of copies of now. The opening hands of our deck are really important as a Stompy deck because we don't get to make that many decisions outside of what hand we keep and how we sequence our threats. Those are the main decision points for this deck. And obviously sideboarding. We have 2 Once Upon a Time and 3 Devourer of Destiny to queue up our opening hand to make sure it absolutely slaps and gets to get in there with the right amount of spells and creatures. One more creature to touch on here is the Nulldrifter. This could be pretty much any other Eldrazi. I think this is just like a flex slot. I've seen a few different uses for this card, but the particular list I'm going for today has got 1 copy of Nulldrifter. We're not very often going to evoke it, but sometimes with Cavern of Souls or the Lotus Petal, that becomes a thing we do. You can also evoke this underneath a Harbinger of the Tides, which is an important thing to think about. But anyway, so most of the time this is going to be a 7-drop for us, and it's going to just be another big haymaker that we have access to. That's pretty much it for the main deck. The sideboard, we have a lot of Graveyard Hate. So we've got Leylines, Ghost Vacuum, and the Faerie Macabre. So we've got a nice spread of different Graveyard Hate pieces there. We've got Null Rod for the artifact deck, especially Karn Forge, which can absolutely make a joke of us. And then we've got ourselves a Mindbreak Trap for the Storm decks that go underneath us, a little bit of removal, and Wastescape Battlemage, which can play to the board whilst blowing up something like a One Ring or bouncing a Murktide Regent and swinging a race. It can do quite a lot. And that's the list. So this is what we're playing today. Please remember to like and subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of my content when I'm doing all these top decks in the format to get people ready for Eternal Weekend. And if you'd like to see those videos early, you can become a YouTube member for just £1 a month, and that gets you early access to my videos. Alright, plug over and done with. Let's start plugging some Eldrazi's right into our opponent's face and beating them down. So we have a hand here that is kind of an awkward one. We'll be relying on this Once Upon a Time to find us a threat, but it's pretty good at doing that, and we can shut down a decent chunk of their deck with the Chalice, in theory. Do I want to rely on just this Once Upon a Time? We have a lot of threats in our deck. Alright, I'm going to reluctantly keep this one. I think mulligan this one is also fine. I think this is kind of a 50-50 hand in a lot of ways. Last our free spell. Sowing Mycospawn or a Thought-Knot Seer. I think the Thought-Knot Seer is probably going to be the more powerful element here for right now. I guess turn 2 we could make a Mycospawn, but it won't be kicked. I think we'll just disrupt our opponent, try and stop them having anything that matters in their hand. So we can block out a bunch of stuff with the Chalice. The Thought-Knot Seer can pick up the rest and beat down a little bit. Okay, so we got a Force of Will, Pitching Ponder for this Chalice. That suggests that the Chalice is going to be pretty good against our opponent. One less counter spell pointed at our Thought-Knot Seer. If we have a Wasteland here, it's not that bad. because we still have a nice glut of land in our hand. Go for another Chalice here. It's a bit slower than the game plan I necessarily want to be playing, but it can do some real work here. Alright, we've got a Brainstorm, shifting something around, just making sure that they actually get use out of their Brainstorm before it goes away forever. So we can play a Thought-Knot Seer here, but it'll be into a Daze. And we have to make a decision if that's the thing we actually want to do. What would the things our opponent keep in their hand? Daze is probably one of those sorts of cards. So I'm just going to play out this Wastes for now and just take it a little bit slower. Because we don't have much pressure, we need to make sure our pressure sticks. We have kind of drawn a little bit badly. Our opponent needed us to draw creatures, and that's not really what's come to fruition here. So our opponent can still animate dead this Troll of Khazad-dûm, and they cycled this in their upkeep to shuffle away the things they put on top of the Brainstorm, which is almost certainly going to be some more 1-drops. And now we're getting a bit of Surveil action. Okay, they left it on top. Wonder what that means for us. Cavern of Souls. I like to see that one. Stay on Eldrazi. Let's take a little look at our opponent's hand and see what they're working with. Psychic Frog, an Animate Dead, a Traxxas. So they can get back the Troll of Khazad-dûm here. How do I feel about them having the Troll? We can't stop it. So I guess we take the Psychic Frog so they can't pitch the Traxxas and reanimate that. Well, I guess we could take the Traxxas itself. But I think I'm more worried about Frog than I am a Traxxas. Because this exile, so it's just be gone. But I think we take the Frog here. Yeah, I'm not feeling great about this one. Truth be told. They get back a 5/5 this turn, which is bigger than our Thought-Knot Seer. So we need to find something meatier here. So the Devourer of Destiny plays here, and it's very good, because it also blanks this Animate Dead in our opponent's hand for now. If we find the guy that pumps our guy, we don't necessarily want to attack and trade off, because they get a card out of that. Kozilek's Command. So this is mana value 6. So we have 2, 4, 6 mana here, plus 2 Lotus Petals. So it does work. Expose us to Daze. They've only got 1 mystery card in hand, though. So we would like to exile target creature. And I think we're probably just scrying here. This is only for Eldrazi creature spells. We don't get to make an uncounterable Kozilek's Command. Did they draw a Daze? Or a Force of Will? They drew the Force of Will. Well, that sucks big time, and that's probably the game for us. They've got 2-turn clock. There's no point attacking here. There's no point blocking. Just a terrible turn cycle for us right there. Yeah, they had 1 random draw, and it had to be 1 of 2 cards there. They probably have 3 of each, possibly 4 days. So they had 7 outs in their deck to draw 2 that turn. Right, in comes the Troll. Not a fan of this. We can't block it because it's a Troll. Not that we would want to here and give our opponent a free card, but maybe we're in a situation where chump blocking wouldn't feel so bad. We don't have the ability to Kozilek's Command right now either. Nope, we're just dead. So we did keep a hand that was a bit light on action, and we were definitely punished for it. So, what is good here? Obviously, Graveyard Hate is something we kind of need, because their Graveyard plan is just better than what we're doing. I do like things like Dismember for some of their guys. I also like the Wastescape Battlemage. So it's a selection of these 11 cards that are coming in here. How do I feel about Maze of Ith? It's pretty good against the Troll, so I don't mind having it. The Heralds End is usually the weakest thing, and it's one of the things that comes out. I think I'd rather have Wastescape Battlemages than the Heralds End in this matchup. Being able to bounce a Troll or something can be quite big news. Nulldrifter seems quite slow here, so I think that gets us a... I don't think we get to run the Chalices and Graveyard Hate. I think it's an either-or situation, because we can't tinker with like the main part of our deck very much. And it's a case of do want these 1 rings. So if we take something out like this, we can bring in some Leylines and get some... We also need Dismembers and things for their Harbinger of the Seas. So maybe that means we don't get to play the Maze of Ith, and we just have to run another Dismember here. Kozilek's Command is Graveyard Hate, so we can use it for that purpose. We could trim on a Lotus Petal, just get a little bit more cheap interaction in, like this. But surely this is a matchup where we actually want the Ghost Vacuum, right? Maybe we can just sit and play. So if we have something like this, maybe we bring back in the 2 Lotus Petals here, and we're looking at something along these lines. So the 1 ring is a very expensive card to try and resolve against our opponent. I do like the Chalice here, but I think if we're boarding out a threat in the Herald's End, we want to board in a threat that is disruptive. So this can blow up an Animate Dead. It can bounce a reanimated monster, so we don't have to worry about it. So I do like the Battle Mage here. I think this is what we're going with. Okay, we can keep this. It has similar problems to a previous hand we had, but it has the Graveyard Hates we're not getting bopped by the reanimation side. Our opponent's mulligans. Let's have a free look at the top cards of our library. I'll take the creature, please. Am I playing out this Wastescape Battlemage? I don't think so. I think it's better as a threat later on, but we get to disrupt something and drop it down. I don't think it's going to be good as a 2-mana 2-2. Or a 1-mana 2-2 if we're just counting the Eldrazi Temple as 1 mana, because it is just 1 land drop. Devourer of Destiny, we'll certainly be doing some stuff with that later on. I will play out a Lotus Petal here. This allows us to play around days. They're going to brainstorm a response to hide stuff? No. So we've got a Psychic Frog, a Brazen Borrower. How much mana do we have here? 2, 4, 5, 6. So any land gives us Devourer of Destiny next turn. But we can also just bounce the Frog. So I think we're going to take the Borrower. Just make sure the graveyard isn't a zone that gets to matter. If we draw a land, we get to Devourer of Destiny there, creature. If we don't, we can always Battlemage it and work on that later. So I think we've put ourselves in a nice spot. I'd like to also talk again about the Chalice of Void. So at the top, I mentioned that Chalice of Void was a thing that stops some removal spells. Our opponent's deck is lighter on removal spells than a lot of other decks in the format, because it's just using things like Archon of Cruelty as its removal spell, or just having massive trolls as big sledgehammers. So swapping them out for the stuff that actually interacts with our opponent, even though they might have a lot of 1-drops, makes a lot of sense, because it's not going to stop them from doing the graveyard stuff. They can still cycle the troll or discard something to a Psychic Frog. Alright, so there is the Psychic Frog. And they played the Flooded Strands, so we know what's in their hand. Land. What do I want here? So we could play this Mycospawn kicked and just remove 2 of our opponent's lands, but they have 2 more lands in hand and a troll, so I don't think that matters. I would like to get our Devourer of Destiny on the go, but that's not really happening right now. So we're probably looking at bouncing their creature and Sowing Mycospawn for a land for ourselves. So we'd probably do the Mycospawn first. So this gets us like an Eye of Ugin is fine here. This can tap for multiple amounts of mana. I think that's better than getting a Wasteland or anything here. Cast this with Kicker. Bounce the creature. And then any land gets us the Devourer of Destiny next turn. I'm just going to run back the same play as last time, I think. Here comes the Frog again. Yep, they're going to keep the cards in hand, so they've got more cards to discard to their Psychic Frog. I don't think we're going to see a land here, unless they really want that Surveil. Oh wow, they just played a Swamp to let us know exactly all the cards they have in their hand. That is an interesting choice. Land. We did draw a land. So this blows up their Frog. And this is a ability that comes when we cast it. So yeah, we just ran them over pretty hard there. And the Graveyard Hate was good. I imagine our opponent's going to board out of their graveyard shenanigans a little bit, but we have to respect it still, so we have to keep it in, which is part of the reason the blue-black reanimated deck is so strong, because you have to respect that it's doing reanimating stuff all the time. Sometimes if you get like the absolute soul read of your opponent, board it out and just keep the stuff in that you would want to play against their fair half of their deck, and it just so happens to go that way, that's fine, but I don't think we can afford to not respect it. So we're going to submit like this again. All right, we have a turn 1 Fleshraker into more stuff. That's usually pretty strong. And we are going to be at threat from our own Ancient Tombs, but I can live with that. So part of the question here is, are we playing out the Fleshraker into days or not? I think I don't want to play into days, which means playing out another one of these so that we can afford to play around the days. It means we have less stuff to do with the Fleshraker. We can't just immediately play the Lotus Petal. We're going to see a Consign to Memory here, aren't we? Sure. Okay, it doesn't really matter that we played out the Lotus Petal then. Unless you draw another Fleshraker. But next time we can Thought-Knot Seer. So the reason why Consign to Memory is like the most played card, I think, in the format right now is partly due to Eldrazi. There's a lot of other stuff it catches as well. So it's just a really nice sideboard card, but it's pretty brutal against the old Eldrazi. Alright, we're just going to go in for a Fleshraker, I think. Another one. Okay, Brainstorm. I would like to play this Wastescape Battlemage, but I'm kind of a little bit reluctant because of our Lotus Petal. That is our only source to actually cast the Wastescape Battlemage here. I think this might be more useful as a thing that we kick. So we're just going to try the Fleshraker. If our opponent's going to... Okay, we're getting a Force of Will on that. I'll just pass that over. Next turn we can jam the Thought-Knot Seer. If they entomb at end step here, that would be bad for us. They did not. Okay. Still cooking. Metamorphosis Fanatic. So this is just going to be a 4/4 lifelink. This is a very good thing to bounce. They don't have any targets here. They can only target its own graveyard, thankfully. Leyline in the Void, not really what we want here. Let's cast this with Kicker. We're taking a lot of damage from our lands here. Glad we saved that Lotus Petal so we could do something like that. I think these Ancient Tombs are going to be the death of us though. There's a limited amount of spells we get to play in this game with our current mana base. Eldrazi Temple. That doesn't hurt, does it? Let's try this out. Let's have a look what our opponent's cooking with. What they're going to do in response to our Thought-Knot Seer. They could brainstorm or they could kill it. Shoot the sheriff. So the way this works is they draw the card, then we get to exile a card after we've seen what they draw. So Metamorphosis Fanatic, Brazen Borrower, Animate Dead. So we can't keep them off of a graveyard-based line by taking either of these. So I think we take the only card they can play. And if they just play a Brazen Borrower here, I don't like half our chances, to be honest with you. Do I want to play out this 2/2? It taxes our opponent's life in quite a big way. What are the chances we draw one of our 6 cards that allows us to kick this in a meaningful way? 2 life is so much though. This is a really difficult decision. Yeah, okay. So we have another problem here, which is that our opponent can reanimate our creatures. And with this Thought-Knot Seer, they can take the Thought-Knot Seer and get us in trouble. Okay, they're going for the Fleshraker. And now they're going to play the Animate Dead on the other one. Okay. To ping us as well. Okay, deck. We're going to need something good here. Kozilek's Command. So we can kill the Thought-Knot Seer, which draws us a card. Probably have to make a bunch of guys. Alright, I don't like it very much. So make some guys, then we have chump blockers. We'll exile the Thought-Knot Seer. This gives us more chump blockers. They're not going to play a lot of colourless spells in their deck. They have 1 mystery card. If it's a daze, then sure, we lose the game. Our opponent has to put these triggered abilities on the stack. If we draw something good here, we can play it because we've got 4 spawns. We get to tap 1 Ancient Tomb once from this point onwards. Another Kozilek's Command. That is an interesting one. Do I think our opponent... They're not going to attack into us. We can't really attack into them. These Ancient Tombs is the only damage you've taken. We take a 1 ping from a Fleshraker and everything else is our own fault. I'm going to attack that Fleshraker. What do they do? I would love to block this. No, we can't afford to take any damage here. Faerie Macabre. Very happy to have that. If we Kozilek's Command here, we don't need to do it right now. We can do it on our opponent's turn. There is some risk involved in casting it. So if we have to sacrifice a bunch of spawns to make it nice and big, then what are we doing? Okay, I would like to make some spawns and I'd like to do some scrying. I don't want to get caught by a daze, so I'm going to leave 1 spawn up. Which does put us to 1. If our opponent's boarded in Orcish Bowmaster and they kill us with them, so be it. This is a Force of Negation hard cast. We're seeing Consigned to Memory. Yep, that's devastating. Wasteland. We need this as a colourless source. Pass it. At least we're not going to get anything reanimated in the near future because of the Faerie Macabre. But this game is feeling bad. Like a Psychic Frog can do so much work here. They've probably got a whole bunch more consigns kicking around. Okay, we're drawing some mana. This is helpful. Our Ancient Tombs are off. We just now need to draw some gas. Reanimating the Fleshraker. We cannot allow this. We'll get rid of both of them. Now, a slight problem we have is if they can reanimate our Faerie Macabre, that's really good because it's a flyer and we can't really beat it. Alternatively, we could just keep drawing lands and not do anything this whole game. We have 4 mana to put into the Eye of Ugin. Okay, we're playing some weird draw-go game right now. Another land gets us closer to doing Eye of Ugin stuff. We're 2 mana away from tutoring. We don't have anything lifelinky to tutor for. The new 7 mana card from Foundations is not yet available. If they put a creature in here and can flip a Fanatic, that'll be bad news for us. I think it'll be game-ending news for us. We've seen the weakness of Leyline in the Void as a piece of graveyard hate. It is a good piece, but if you draw it, it sucks. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can start our Vuganing now without being able to cast it this turn, but we can get somewhere. We need this turn to be really good for us. They just have a Brazen Borrower here, we're dead. Just playing a 3-1 guy. Can't beat a 3-1 guy. Yeah, so we just lost to our own Ancient Tombs there. Our Ancient Tombs dealt us, what, 17? Damn, we took 1 from the Fleshraker, right? So it dealt us 18 damage, our own Ancient Tombs there. Now, if one of these had been Eldrazi Temple, we'd have, like, 8 life, and we're just going to start chewing up big monsters. But that is the price you pay for playing an Ancient Tomb deck sometimes. Alright, let's go to round 2. We're on the play for round 2. Our hand is a little bit more exciting than some of the ones we've had before, so I'm going to keep this one. I think we lead off on Wasteland. If it gets Wastelanded, it's not that big a deal. It will change the way our opponent will fetch their lands. It will also conceal what we're doing until turn 2. There's a lot of upside for playing the Wasteland here. Basic Island and a Ponder. Good to not shuffle. Let's have a Fleshraker. Okay. We're in. We could draw like an Eye of Ugin, we could just really pop off here. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Swords to Plowshares hit our creature this turn. Cephalid Illusionist, you say? Okay. What is the correct play here? I guess step 1 is probably just to attack our opponent, isn't it? Let's see if they walk into... I don't think they're going to do anything other than take 2 damage here. So we could play out a Blast Zone. We could Thought-Knot Seer into our opponent and try and take away their combo piece. Or we could try and Kozilek's Command away this creature. I think holding this up to hit graveyard stuff doesn't really matter. So the upside of doing the Kozilek's Command play is if our opponent has the combo again, they would have to have a land to send it again. If we Thought-Knot Seer and our opponent's got 2 Nomads in hand or a Nomad and a Shuko, then this does nothing. But I think getting ahead on board makes slightly more sense here. So we're going to send the Thought-Knot Seer. If they have a daze, they have to daze before the Fleshraker resolve. The Fleshraker trio resolves. Let's see if we can have a look at their hand. Now they might have just redundancy here and we might not be able to go anywhere. Nomads in court. Okay, we'll take that. They did not have the redundancy. They can still ponder for it. They did actually have the Cephalid Illusionist, so we did actually find the right play there. Which is nice. If we kill their Illusionist there, we lose the game. There's Ponder. That's 4 looks out of Nomads. They've got the Underground Sea in their list, which is kind of like a throwback to older builds. Where you're actually trying to sometimes cast your Cabal Therapies and stuff. Whereas the newer lists tend to run Memory's Journey. I think we ran that earlier in the week. And I think that build is just better than the one with the black mana in for now. They might not be running Nadu. That's what that might mean. Which seems wild because of how good Nadu is. But we'll see. They shuffled off that Ponder. Right, let's go to attacks. Let's bash. So we have 5, 6 mana here. So we could kick a Mycospawn. Strip out their white source. Strip out their Underground Sea. And then also Thought-Knot Seer. Is that true? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, because we have to use this. So if we go and get... I was just thinking, if we blow this white source up and then get an Eye of Ugin, that doesn't work. We could just go and get an Eye of Ugin and also cast the Thought-Knot Seer here, which I think is my preferred play here. So we get the Eye of Ugin, then we can cast the Thought-Knot Seer. Get another trigger here. A Daze and a Cephalid Illusionist. We don't really care about any of these. Maybe we take the Daze out here. This pings our opponent for another 1. So we could do a Kozilek's Command for 3. Which, is that enough to... It's pretty close to killing our opponent. So it costs 2 less because of the Eye of Ugin. Eye of Ugin tapping for a lot of mana this turn. Doing it for 3. So we get another ping here. And if we can find anything we can cast with these tokens, like this One Ring that we have in our hand, for example, then we can burn our opponent out. Alright, our opponent's seen the writing on the wall and is scooping up. Alright, Cephalid Breakfast. So they are a graveyard-centric combo deck, you say. So Leyline in the Void is obviously useful, as is Faerie Macabre, as is Ghost Vacuum. The Chalice is fine here, but it's not incredible. The One Ring is probably not where we need to be. Could be looking at something along these sorts of lines. We probably want the Dismembers as well. So we do something that looks like... Do we need all these at the Heralds at the end? We probably don't need the Maze of Ith. That can go. Now, the Chalice is fine. It will stop Swords to Plowshares and things. But our opponent's plan for this game is not to kill our creatures. Our opponent's plan is to combo us out and kill us that way. Okay, so we've got double Devourer of Destiny into turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer. Okay, I think that's fine. So we get to look at the top 4 and then choose one if we want it, and then we get to look at top 4 again. Okay, they're not playing a Nomads here, which is good news for us. Okay, so I like the Fleshraker a lot here. Put one of those cards on top. Probably the Fleshraker here. And we'll let this one go. Do I like the Fleshraker? The Lotus Petal does mean that we could get access to Sowing Mycospawn. Like if we play... would we play the Fleshraker on 2, or would we play the Thought-Knot Seer on 2? It's probably the Thought-Knot Seer, right? Which means you probably want to put the Lotus Petal on top. Our opponent might have Prismatic Ending, so we're not going to play out the Lotus Petal. Our opponent's just having a look at what we exiled. So this means we have access to turn 2 Sowing Mycospawn, if we want it. So we can play out the Lotus Petal so we have access to Kozilek's command for 1 if something weird happens. I don't think that's worth doing because of the risk of Prismatic Ending. Flow Strand. If our opponent is a build with some random Lotus Petals in them, they might be able to blow us out here. But we have Thought-Knot Seer around Daze next turn. Cabal Therapy. What are they going to name here? Probably Thought-Knot Seer. They could name the Devourer of Destiny because they know we have 2 of them. They named the Faerie Macabre. Okay. Cavern of Souls. That is a big game here. Play this, name Eldrazi. I will give up the Lotus Petal here. Get our uncounterable Thought-Knot Seer on the go. Because we have the green mana for the Sowing Mycospawn next turn because of the Cavern. Let's have a look what you're working with. They did have a Prismatic Ending. I see. How do I feel about these cards? We can just take their removal spell. Have the Saga, which can eventually get them towards their win condition. If they play the Teferi and bounce our guy, that's kind of annoying too. If we take the Plow, they don't get to do anything this turn cycle apart from that Cabal Therapy. But then they just play the Teferi and bounce our guy. Then we get another crack at their hand if we want it. That's probably not the worst. Take the Plow here. Force them into plays that are less mana efficient. We're not so far away from being able to Devourer of Destiny a bunch of stuff as well. So we can take out the Teferi that way. Obviously, if they happen to draw into the combo and they send it and we lose, then that's fair enough. That's part of the power of the Cephalid Breakfast deck. Sometimes it just says, well, actually, just get to win now. There's the Teferi, as expected. They bounce our Thought-Knot Seer, we draw 2 cards. Or, sorry, they draw 2 cards. One from the Thought-Knot Seer, one from the Teferi. I like the position our opponent is in, because we don't have a lot of pressure in play right now. Play this out. 2, 4, 5. So we'll have 1 mana left over if we were to Sow Mycospawn. So we could go and get a Wasteland and just take out this Saga straight away before it gets to do anything. Is that better than casting a Thought-Knot Seer? Our opponent might just have the combo. I think we are priced into hurting ourselves here. Illusionist, Ponder, Ending, Retrofit's Foundry. Wow, they are on a non-Nardi build. We did have the read on that one. Do I care about Retrofit's Foundry? Seems kind of bad. Take the Ponder. So we can take out this Saga next turn with our Mycospawn. Kozilek's command, very good at killing tokens. The tokens won't be very large anyway. We can just kind of ignore that. If they have a land, they could deploy the Retrofit, so it's at least a 2-2. They have instant speed, Prismatic Ending, but I don't think we care about that. They've got an island. They can play the Foundry if they want to. Might mean it's slightly more difficult for us to kill the Teferi. Yep, they are playing out the Foundry. That's going to make their Eyes of Saga constructs bigger. Oh no. Okay, they're making it now. That timing is really peculiar to me. Okay, that's why they're doing it. That makes sense. Okay. What are you going to take out? The other Thought-Knot Seer? They named the Sowing Mycospawn. They don't want us to be able to wasteland their land. Okay. Opponent now in a pretty good spot, as it turns out. We can't take both of the cards from them. Okay, so we have to kill the Teferi here to unlock our ability to interrupt. So we play this Yavimaya out. We have the mana to Thought-Knot Seer and take an Illusionist, but they have a second Illusionist. We can Kozilek's command away their graveyard. And that is going to have to be our plan here. The often forgotten mode. So we should be able to play both Illusionists here. If I'd have known what our opponent hand was when we cast the Thought-Knot Seer, I would have cast the Mycospawn instead and just taken out the Saga while we had the chance. A Prismatic Ending for 4 on our guy. That was not what I was expecting to see there. Okay. There's another Urza Saga. Sure. I think we're better served trying to just do our own plan here rather than trying to hold this up because they're going to play around it. This should give us enough mana to fire off a Thought-Knot Seer even. Okay, so we have the Fleshrakers if we want them. So we can have 2 Fleshrakers. Is that worthwhile? So we go Fleshraker, cast this, and then we cast on the other Fleshraker, and then we get to cast the Thought-Knot Seer, and then we're still dead to the Cephalid Illusionist is the problem. So I guess put these on the bottom. Which I like the Fleshraker. Leyline in the Void, that is no good here. We need like another Thought-Knot Seer. A Blast Zone. That works here, right? For now. 2 Cephalid Illusionists. So play out this Blast Zone. Blow up the Retrofitter's Foundry and the Shuko right now. And then we just need to find an answer for this Saga. Okay. If our opponent wants to make a 1/1 guy, I don't care that much about it. I wonder if they'll play out the Illusionist. They probably can't play out the Illusionist because of our Devourer they know about. They can pitch one of these and this will blow up their Shuko and Retrofitters. So by not blowing this up, what we do is we force our opponent to play the Illusionist and make us crack this. Because if they wait till this one comes off, then this will hit both of them because these are Sorcerer Speed activated as well. So we kind of put our opponent in a bit of a bind as to whether or not they're supposed to play this Illusionist. Doesn't mean we have to hold this land open. But if they play out the Illusionist, then we don't have to. We can Devourer. But they know we have the Devourer. It's interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Should we just blow it up now? Because all that will happen is they'll wait for this to tick down. And then when it does, they'll kill us. We need to hold open this interaction. And this is the way we do exactly that. So they've got a land in their hand, so play that out. So now they have access to making a construct and a retrofitters. So they'll have a 1, 2, 3, 4 power creature. So we'll be able to tussle with our Thought-Knot Seer, but we can blow the zone. That leaves us open to them just comboing us out. So we need to find a piece of graveyard hate or some other form of interaction. Unless they just play out this Cephalid Illusionist and really help us out now. Oh wow, they just had enough. Sure. I'm not sure this game was over, to be honest. Alright, let's go to round 3. Wow. I hope you like Fleshraker's opponent. I'm going to keep this one. Thoughtseize. Alright. I wonder what they take here. Could be the Lotus Petal, just to slow our roll a little bit. Took one of the Fleshrakers. Do I want to expose myself to a Daze here? Or do I just want to get this the Heralds the End in? I'm just going to play the Heralds the End. It's not the most efficient way to maximize our Fleshrakers, but we can quite comfortably play around a Daze there. Netherglyph. Alright, so our opponent is on the fairer plan, which I suspected from the Thoughtseize. They're on like the blue-black tempo, which we played earlier in the week. Deck felt really good when I played it. Alright, Tamio as well. So in theory, the unfair stuff we're about to do should be enough, as is often the case. Don't really want to call its command for 0, so we're just going to pass it over. We can take a little bit of damage. Our opponent's on the Tamios rather than Emperor of Bones or anything like that, so they're going to have less ways of actually dealing combat damage to us. Thoughtseize, you can take our Colourless command or our Fleshraker. They might take the Mycospawn as well, because that can generate a lot of mana to go with our existing Fleshraker. We basically have 3 of the best cards in our hand, so a real suite of awesome things our opponent has to choose between, which is the very worst. Okay, they didn't want us to get the Mycospawn. Tamio's attacking. Are we going to be seeing a Brainstorm here to flip the Tamio? No. A Sowing Mycospawn, you say? I'll cast this one. Let's start doing the thing. This is a pretty gross play. So we go and get ourselves the Eye of Ugin here. A little Colourless friend. Pinging our opponent down for a bunch here. Pinging them again. We're casting a Fleshraker, getting some more pings. A Daze. I will pay using one of our guys. Drawing a card. Alright, they're just scooping it up from this point. The power of Eldrazi into Faerie decks is pretty gross. So, what do I want in a matchup like this? Wastescape Battlemage and Dismember are the first things my eyes are drawn to. The Chalice of the Void actually looks pretty good here. They have a lot of 1-drops. They have a lot of ways of attacking us with those. Do want the Maze of Ith for their Psychic Frog, which is one of the creatures we actually care about. I think that is the case. I think the Heralds the End needs to become Wastescape Battlemage. And then it's a case of, do we want these Dismembers? Because we need to be able to kill the Harbinger of the Seas. So we're going to want access to these 3 Dismembers. Is trying to resolve a 4-drop a bit too much against the Daze deck? Probably. So maybe we get rid of those. That gives us 2 Dismembers. And then maybe it's the Nulldrifter that goes. Although we can draw cards with the Nulldrifter underneath the Harbinger of the Seas, which is kind of an important thing to do. I suppose we could bin off one of these Devourers for similar reasons. It's an expensive thing we ever get to cast it. I wouldn't be surprised to see Eldrazi decks adopting the new 7 mana guy from the Magic Foundation set instead of the Nulldrifter, actually. Alright, I don't want to keep this many lands, so we're going to mulligan this. Some spells here. I will keep this. I don't want the Yavimaya. I don't think so. This is the one that goes, because we have the actual green source, so we can cast our Sowing Mycospawn to get us out of a bit of a bind from our opponent. So there is an argument to cast them once upon a time before our opponent plays a land, so they can't daze it. But we get to draw another card, and then we have more of an idea what we're drawing to. So I do prefer that. We have to be wary of our opponent's Wastelands here, in terms of how we're sequencing our plays. I'll play this one out first. We already have the Wastes there, that's pretty nice. The Sowing Mycospawn kind of already gets the Wastes for us though, so maybe we just want more action. But if they have like a combo of Thought Seizing this or Stifling the Ability, I don't think I want to be living in that world. Do I really want to get another land in this hand, or do I just want more beef? We could get an Ancient Tomb, and that allows us to do stuff on turn 2. Right, we'll get the Ancient Tomb. I'll play out the Eldrazi Temple, and I will pass. There's an argument for playing the Ancient Tomb, because if they wasteland it, I'd rather have the Tomb wastelanded than the Eldrazi Temple. But if we draw another Eldrazi Temple, we get to save more life. There is a Psychic Frog. We have the ability to kill this, but it does play somewhat into daze. But everything we do here plays into daze. And I'd rather have our Kozilek's Command dazed or our Thought-Knot Seer. I'll make some thingies and I'll try and kill that guy. Can we get it? Oh, we got the daze. Daze tends to be one of the things that you might expect to see coming out of these decks post-board. So I think it's worth taking a chance, and it paid off for us. Now, because we have this Eye of Ugin, we get to try a Thought-Knot Seer as well. This might eat a daze. Oh, it didn't. Oh, wow. We are absolutely cruising here. I guess I'll take their thing that matters out of their hand and leave them with just a creature that is going to be smaller than what we're doing. Now, we are in an incredibly commanding position right now. It's one from our opponent, so I don't know what selection of these are. I have to imagine that they probably have put back 2 of the lands. So we're just going to cancel that because we have to assume they're going to have something better going on. And a Tamiyo, sure. Cavern of Souls, I don't hate that one. And Eldrazi. We can't quite cast this for kicker, unfortunately. What would I like here? We could get the Waste just to hedge for the future. I think that's probably the correct thing to do here. Do I think our opponent can grow this? No. Not at instant speed with all their mana tapped. Okay, so next turn we can just deploy the Blast Zone, blow up both their creatures uncounterably. It will blow up the Tamiyo even if it's flipped because it just says non-land permanent. And then our opponent's going to have a horrible time. Yep, draw a card, be my guest. Can't block. This doesn't have reach. We've got a play here. What is it going to be? A Fatal Push on our Thought-Knot Seer. Yep, it's pretty good. Gets him a card back. Flips the Tamiyo, but that's going to die soon anyway. Get rid of these 2 permanents. Bash for 3. We get to bash with our Mycospawn for 3. Puts our opponent to... Oh, sorry, it's only for 2 because the Tamiyo trigger is still around. So it's only 2. We need to find a little bit more action now. This is the point where our opponent's got a bunch of cards in hand. Psychic Frog. That's the exact sort of action that I didn't want our opponent to find. They've got 3 cards in hand, so it can be a 4-5 this turn. What we got here? 1, 2, 3 mana. 4-5. We're a long ways off here. Do I want to make our opponent discard a bunch of cards? I don't think so. I think we just have to take the hit from the frog, and then we can attack with the Mycospawn and at least try and pressure our opponent on the 1 axis that we can, which is their life total. They will just be raking in the cards. They've already got a grip full of cards over there. I guess we still have 3 cards. It's just our cards don't do anything. Alright, they're getting flying. Getting bashed up. Alright, they're discarding a card just to grow the frog a little. Grow the frog again. They got rid of a consign to memory. That must mean they've got another one, surely. Because being able to hit the triggers is really clutch. Even if you can't counter it because of our cavern. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we still can't spin up anything with our Eye of Ugin. We love a Devourer of Destiny. So our opponent can just dump a load of cards in the frog if they want to. I'm surprised they played out a land there. I think that's better as Psychic Frog food. Maybe they really want to counterspell. They've got a Force of Will and they want to hardcast it there. What does this actually do for us? Nothing. We're better off tutoring. We're seeing some movement over there from our opponent. A Fatal Push. I think tutoring for a monster is better than So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, tuning for a monster there is just better than playing a Chalice out. A Borrower. Alright, this is a little bit scary now. How much damage they're going to put on us. So we get the Devourer of Destiny. That clears the Frog. If they pump the Frog this turn, so it hits for 6, I think that's the best. Alright. Tamiyo, that does not have power. That's an important thing. Brainstorm. Sure, this flips to Tamiyo. Thoughtseize does nothing, just takes our Chalice, puts our opponent to 2. So, what is the play here? We're definitely tutoring. So if we get a Wastescape Battlemage, we can try and bounce this out of play, so that it's not going to be killing us next turn. But we may as well get the Devourer of Destiny and just try and kill it dead. We could get something like a Fleshraker here, and this only costs us 1 mana, so we would get to Fleshraker and then tutor for something. But we still need to find something else there, wouldn't we? I think we just have to get the Devourer. This also doesn't die to the removal spell they have. Okay, I like the Eldrazi Temple here. If we Wasteland these 2 lands, then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can just Wasteland both of our opponent's lands, so they can't consign to memory this trigger. Just go to second main phase. And play this out. We cast this, so we have 2, 4. So we don't have to tap the Cavern of Souls here, which is really important. Oh, sorry, we didn't have to tap the Ancient Tomb. We were supposed to tap the Cavern of Souls for that. We made a horrible mistake there. So we get rid of that guy. Oh my god, that was a terrible mistake. And then we don't have to tap the Ancient Tomb. And I said Cavern of Souls in front of me, and then I made a horrible mistake and tapped the wrong thing. Ugh. That was not the one, was it? We probably don't get to activate this Eye of Ugin again. That just cost us the entire game. There's another Frog. So if we'd have had a 6/6 here, they would have had to chump block with a Frog. But then they still kill us with the Borrower on the backswing. Maybe it doesn't actually end up making a difference here. I'm sure they knew we had these 2 cards in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we play this out. We tutor. We can play a Fleshraker. That's not good enough. Is there a way we can play the Fleshraker and then get the Petal? That's still not good enough, is it? No. So if we... Let's just talk about this quickly. So if we had our 6/6 here, then all that happens is we attack, they block with the Frog, then they kill us with a Borrower. So it was a misplay to not have our creature, and certainly reduced their outs. It didn't change the outcome of the game, but it was definitely a pretty horrible mistake. Okay, I like how we sideboarded though. I think this feels pretty good. I'm just debating whether I want this Devourer of Destiny or this, or maybe I want to have the Once Upon a Time instead. Do I like the Devourer of Destiny more than the Nulldrifter? I don't think so. Right, we're going to go in like this again. Okay. We've got Thought-Knot Seer. We've got a little bit of removal for their little Harbinger of the Seas. If they have a Wasteland and they try and take us off of Eye of Ugin, we just get to start the game all over again, and that's fine by me. Eye of Ugin is such a beating. A land that taps for sometimes 8 mana in a turn is a bit much. Right, Thoughtseize is good here. We take out our Thought-Knot Seer, and that leaves us in some amount of trouble here. Glaring Fleshraker. Would I like to take damage and play around a daze? Yes, I think so. We don't have that many threats, so we need to make sure that they are sticky. Right, they're fatal pushing our creature. A Chalice of the Void. Let's see if we can shut off a bunch of our opponent's plays. Signs of memory, sure. So when I played the Tempo deck earlier in the week, it felt really hard to lose to Eldrazi. Especially when you go post-board and you have all these consigned memories. It's just the cleanest of answers going. Maybe we're supposed to mulligan for a really powerful hand. Right, so they have this guy. I can kill it now, but that's not the most important thing to do. Okay. I'm happy to kill it on our opponent's turn, because maybe that means they have to devote a lot more time to bringing this back, potentially. And they might play a juicier threat that we need to answer. Although a Psychic Frog... A Psychic Frog is killable via Dismember now, right? Because they'll go down to 3 cards in hand. So it can only be a 5. Harbinger of the Seas. Sure. There is a juicier thing for us to hit. So we wait for this to hit us, and then we hit this post-combat. Otherwise we grow their Nethergoyf. Well, we're paying a lot of life for the chance to do this. Our opponent didn't have a counterspell for it. Probably need to find a green source here. Thought-Knot Seer. That is fine. Once again, Ancient Tomb causing us some issues. Shoot the sheriff, and a brainstorm. Yikes. I guess we need to make sure that our next creature works. Does that mean we have to take the shoot the sheriff? That seems terrible. But what are we supposed to do here? Like drawing a green source would obviously really help. Like we could take out the brainstorm so at least we know what we're playing against. But that's double removal spell that we got to get through. Alright, I think we'll take the brainstorm with the idea that we want to be getting our Mycospawn to get us our Maze of Ith. And that can block the creature for a while. Yeah, we lose our guy. They draw a card. They put us to 3. So we get 1 more activation of an Ancient Tomb, and that puts us on 1 life. Have a Bowmasters, and they can finish us off. Bowmaster's not really a great card in this matchup anyway. Yeah, we just got nothing here. That was awful. Yeah, so if you go back in the other day and watch the blue-black tempo side of this, you can see how easy it feels to beat the Eldrazi deck, and is one of the reasons to play it, I think. Like, tempo decks historically have always been pretty good into Eldrazi style decks for the most part. Alright, not going so great so far. Let's see if we can turn it around a bit more in round 4. Our opener here does not have enough mana, I don't think, so we're going to send this one back. I like this one a lot more. We can Eye of Ugin, Fleshraker, kind of try and pop off that way. Actually, no, we can't do the Eye of Ugin, Fleshraker. We have to do Eldrazi Temple into Fleshraker, don't we? I'm going to put back the Cavern here. I want to be able to maximize our Fleshraker here. That could end up being a mistake, but we have to use the Colourless source to cast our Fleshraker. So as soon as we play as Eye of Ugin, which is the thing we want to have with our Fleshraker in play, we don't actually get to use the Cavern to cast our Fleshraker anyway, which is why I've thrown it back. Tamio, so we could be looking at Doomsday or something. We could be looking at the same sort of deck we just played. Okay, we need to try and win game 1, and then nab one of the post-board games. It's going to be a little bit tricky post-board against this deck. Even if it's Doomsday, that's also not great for us. Okay, let's try this once upon a time. Do I want this Cavern of Souls? Do I want this Sowing Mycospawn? I probably want more Mycospawn action. I'm a little bit reluctant about doing this, but we can always do the Mycospawn next turn anyway. So I think it's fine to give up our Petal. If we get Thoughtseize, then that's going to suck. But we'll play the Petal out if this resolves. I guess even if it doesn't, we'd probably play the Petal out anyway. Right, let's yield to our Fleshraker triggers. We're getting the Petal in. So next turn we can probably just cast both of these Mycospawns. A Wasteland. Pretty good. We still get to Mycospawn here though. Tamio coming in. So this Wasteland suggests to me that our opponent is not playing Doomsday. It's very rare to see a Wasteland in the Doomsday list. So this can get us the Yavimaya, which then allows us to cast this other Mycospawn. Oh, they're countering the triggered ability. Very rude. That is really irritating for us now because we don't get to cast this other card in our hand. Our opponent has no idea how good that was. Obviously, you know, they know it was a good play. That's why they did it. But, yeah. Real problem casting this green spell. Just like we've run into numerous times so far. Alright, our opponent is on a Dreadnought deck. This is probably the deck that Bosch and Roll put out recently. Might have even been today when I saw it. Or something along those lines at least. So it might have the Oculus card. So you can manifest the Dreadnought and just flip it up. Kozilet's Command. Not Kozilet's Command. But we did find the green source. Do some Fleshraker in. Do we want a Blast Zone to take out both of these things? And then just take a hit. The problem with getting Blast Zone is if we get Wastelanded, that is lights out. But it's the same deal with the Maze of Ith at the end of the day, isn't it? So it probably should be the Blast Zone. We're clocking in with some real damage over there. We need to dodge Wasteland for 1 turn. We can afford to take a hit for 12. Clean up their bits and pieces and bash for lethal in the near future. Yep, we're just going to take it. Don't play a Wasteland. They could crack a clue looking for one. Or they could stifle our Blast Zone. That's also pretty irritating for us. If they have the Blast Zone, is there a way that we get around this? If they have the Stifle, is there a way that we get around this? I don't know if there is. They've already gone through 2 Stifles though. I guess we wait and see if they crack a clue at end step. They did. Okay, so now we will blow the zone. That also tells us that our opponent doesn't have a Stifle in hand, because otherwise you just hold up the Stifle there. Now I feel heavily favoured. But games can spin on a dime when there's 12-12 tramplers in the mix. But we can probably just bash around that quite easily at this point. I wonder if our opponent doesn't crack the clue then, and we go to their turn, they maybe draw the Stifle off the top and get us that way. Right, they're cracking a clue here. That's probably not going to be enough, and I suspect we're going to gain 2 here. There it is. So they're going to have Psychic Frogs in their deck, and we're just going to have to deal with that, I'm afraid. Let's get these Wastescape Battlemages in. They're probably going to have that Harbinger of the Seas, so probably going to need some Dismembers. The One Rings into the deck that's trying to mess with our mana base with Stifles and Wastelands is probably not where it's at. So I guess for similar reasons, the Nulldrifter or the Devourer goes. Devourer does have the good turn 1 utility though, that's the thing. Maybe we'll try and take out the Devourer, because sometimes we can cast a Nulldrifter underneath a little bit of duress on our mana base. Yeah, I think that's fine. Wastescape Battlemage can exile an artifact or enchantment, which includes Phyrexian Dreadnought. I would very much like more mana in this hand. Oh, that's a bad hand, isn't it? Alright, we're going to 5. Alright, this is fine. Not fine, but it's fine. I guess we ship an Ancient Tomb. And probably the Yavimaya. So we get Uncountable Fleshraker into Uncountable Mycospawn. It's a plan. So I like the Chalices here because our opponent has a lot of 1-drop threats, but also they have the whole trying to get me with Source to Plowshares. There's like a nice clean removal spell. Oh, hello again, Nulldrifter. You just can't stay away, can you? I think I would like an Ancient Tomb here. Then we'll play an Ancient Tomb, and our opponent will be like, okay, that's the Ancient Tomb they had. And not know that we've got another one saved up. So there will be a window where our opponent can, after our Fleshraker, they might be able to Wasteland our Cavern and cut us off with green, which will shut off the Nulldrifter evoke cost as well. Right, Wasteland. Sure. Now, the plus side of this is that our opponent isn't putting power on the board. They are getting incremental advantage with this Tamiyo, but we're not under duress in the same way we would be if we were taking like 3 damage a turn or whatever from like a Delver style creature. Now, Tamiyo is a very, very good magic card, but it does attack on a different axis, and that actually benefits us right now. Another Wasteland, okay. Not looking great. Eldrazi Temple. We have fewer green sources in our deck, which is why I'm preserving the Cavern of Souls, rather than just hanging that one out there. Oh, not a Wasteland. Hallelujah. Many, many clues over there. We could just see a Phyrexian Dreadnought this turn. We didn't though. That's good news. They might not have any Source to Plowshares in their deck. They might not be the Esper build. They might just be the full-on black-blue build. We'll see though. Right, let's name Eldrazi. Our opponent's cracking a fetch land. I think they must be just straight blue-black now rather than the Esper build. It's very hard to fit all of the cards you want in if you're going 3 colours. We still stop a bunch of their stuff with our Chalice, including things like Consigned to Memory and all that jazz. Right, we're losing our creature. But our opponent is just, you know, drawing cards. They haven't made inroads into our life total just yet. So if we can deploy the things in our hand, maybe we can get somewhere. We actually have a window where we might be able to kill a Tamiyo. That's what we're really into, but I'm not about that really. I think we're just going to play another Fleshraker. It's good last time. Forced out a removal spell. Maybe this one will stick. And if it does, then whenever we get to play spells, things go a lot better for us. If we can just get enough mana to get a Mycospawn out, and then go and get like an Eye of Ugin, and all of a sudden we have a lot more mana and we can double spell potentially in the very near future. Another Fatal Push. Goodbye, friend. So we played the Wasteland turnover twice, and now we've played the Fatal Push turnover twice. Okay. Kozilek's command. Am I just hitting this when we haven't given them a target for days? I don't think so. I think we're going to evoke this. I don't particularly like it, but I think it's fine here. We need to get some more lands. By Nulldrifter. Hello, Eldrazi Temple. So next turn we can start doing some Mycospawning into Thought-Knot Seer, perhaps. See what we get off the top. A Psychic Frog. Now, our opponent's got a full grip of cards, so the chance of us being able to kill that Psychic Frog are probably somewhere around 0%. They're leaving it at 1 mana, so Consigned to Memory is definitely going to be a thing that they're looking to do. So if I deploy the Fleshraker, then I don't get to do anything else. If I deploy the mic, I think I have to deploy the Mycospawn and get some more lands, get towards double spell in here. This will overload our opponent's ability to interact here because they can either hit the triggered ability or they can hit the creature. They probably just hit the triggered ability if they have a consigned to memory here. Or they do neither of those things. So we go and get ourselves an Eye of Ugin. And we will cast this Fleshraker. I'm not expecting this to resolve. But if it gets something out of the way so our Kozilek's command can do some work next turn, I can live with that. But they're probably going to flip the Tamiyo. Yeah, we started from a multi 5 and it hasn't gotten a lot better since then. Right, so they kept Dazers in. Makes sense on the play. Uncertain if they'll have them in on the draw though. So now the Frog gets to smash us up pretty nastily here. We've got 8 cards in hand because they've been drawing so many extra cards off this Tamiyo. I'm not going to block here. We can make them discard some cards, and maybe that helps us out slightly. But it's the cost of our guy. Harbinger. Abhorrent Oculus. Yep. This is pretty good. I think this might just be the exact list Bottom Roll was playing. 7 cards in our opponent's hand is many cards. What are we supposed to do about that? We can Thought-Knot Seer into Thought-Knot Seer. That doesn't help us out though. We need to kill the Frog and the Oculus. Okay, so if we go make some guys, exile a creature, X is 3 off of that one. Alright, so X is 3. Let's try this. This gets us 3 tokens so we can then try and Kozilek's command, get rid of the Frog. Alright. That's obviously a bit of a disaster for us. Jeez. Nah, we're not winning that one. If we play the Thought-Knot Seer out first, instead there, we get to have a look at our opponent's hand. Maybe we take that Force, but then we have a Daze to beat, and we don't get to beat the Daze with the being able to kill this, so we'd have to try and kill the Frog, but then we can't pay for the Daze. Yeah, no, we're just not having a great time against what our opponent's putting down there. I think we go in again, though. We just come out the gates blaring here. Okay, I think I'll keep this one. So we don't get this card this turn. So it's going to be what we're going to have next turn. Do I want a Eldrazi Temple? We could put a Once Upon a Time on top because we're not casting a spell this turn. And that just gives us more looks at what we might want. But what would we want here? I don't know. Let's put the Once Upon a Time on top. The Waste being exiled is potentially going to come back to bite us. Am I deploying an Eldrazi Temple? I'll play the Ancient Tomb. This allows us to Fleshraker around Daze next turn at the cost of being vulnerable to Wasteland. There's the Wasteland. Hello, vulnerabilities. You're back. Alright, so now we draw this Once Upon a Time. Haven't cast any spells yet, so let's have a look. Glaring Fleshraker is interesting. The double Fleshraker is pretty strong. I like the Cavern of Souls as well, though. Right, let's play this Eldrazi Temple and hope they don't have another Wasteland. And then we can just do Uncountable Fleshraker into Uncountable Fleshraker and just keep the critters piling up. Not a Wasteland. That's good to see. Thoughtseize here? It is a Thoughtseize. They can't take us off Fleshraker. They can take us off one of the Fleshrakers, which I think is probably the correct play here. Unless they're really worried about some sort of Dreadnought line not working into our Wastescape Battlemage. I can't imagine it's the Devourer here, so it's probably the Fleshraker. Our opponent agrees. I would like to just get our Eldrazi tick in here. Oh, what's that? Goodbye, Cavern or Temple? It's the Cavern, okay. That does tell us a little bit about what our opponent's putting down over there. Yep, just kill all our stuff and eventually they'll play a threat and win. However, this Chalice of the Void might be pretty strong. They can't Daze because they only have a Swamp in play. Has to be a Force. Now, they might have a Force because they did Wasteland our Cavern of Souls, but even then, we still get him to turn back out of it. This will be the first exchange of resources that isn't like a 1-for-1. Alright, we're just in. So while this is in play, no Dreadnoughts, no Tamiyos, no Stifles, no Consigned to Memories. That's quite a big deal. Another City Sewers. Leaving it on top. Another Cavern would be nice. Not a Cavern. Am I supposed to play out this Wastescape Battlemage as a 2-2? I don't think so, because if we draw one more land, we can bounce a Harbinger out of play, and that could be really important. Alternatively, if they make a Dreadnought, we at least have an answer for that Dreadnought. A Yavimaya. Okay. Well, I Thought-Knot Seer resolve. Let's find out. No. Force of Will pitching a Stifle. Makes sense because they can't use a Stifle underneath our Chalice. This Chalice is just going to be in there until they Brazen Borrow it. That's probably going to be the only way they can interact with it. Just to land and pass. 3 cards left in their hand. A Wastescape Battlemage. Sure, I will play you because we have another one. Just need to get some damage on the go. I didn't kill it with anything. No, shoot the Sheriff or whatever. Oh, Wasteland. Fan of seeing that. Kozilek's command, though. And it's some pretty big news. Let's attack with our friend. So they're holding open hardcast Force of Will mana. So they don't really want to just fire off this Kozilek's command. Okay, they're playing something, so I want to see what they're playing. And then we can adjust what we're doing with our Kozilek's command. Alright, Ponder into the Chalice of the Void. So this might be to get enough stuff in the graveyard for the Oculus. Alright, our opponent said it was an error. Okay. That's might be quite a costly error here. So attack ourselves here with both of these. I'm going to do it leaving up playing around Daze. Like, what could they have in their hand they're not leveraging now? Daze is certainly one of those cards. Alright, so they did have a Force of Will, which we expected after they hit the Cavern of Souls. Let's attack with our base battle mage here. We should have played our Fleshraker as soon as we had the chance there, to be honest. Because we only actually have one colourless source of mana right now. So I mean, I'm supposed to play this battle mage to make sure I have a colourless mana if they wasteland us. That's certainly a thing to think about here. Yeah, our opponent could have cut us off with colourless mana with that wasteland. The fact they haven't has certainly given us a little bit more rope in this game. So I don't feel great still, even though we're relatively far ahead on board. It doesn't take much to swing it when we just attack them with 2/2s. Well, this will put our opponent to 4. This will just give us a lethal threat for next turn. Just try and put this game to bed. Nothing to exile. So we don't get to put that ability on the stack. Right, so we got ping with our friend. We get another ping off of this if it resolves, and that would give us lethal in play, a Daze. Yep, so we correctly identified they'd have a Daze, so we get to ping them. So even if they kill our Devourer, we still have 4 power coming in. I think our Chalice might be keeping us in this one. So now I feel pretty good about it. So if they play a creature, we can probably just swing through it and not care very much. We've got an additional ping of damage. We've got 2 pings of damage from the Wastescape Battlemage. So we only need to hit our opponent with one of our 2/2s next turn. We got the GGs in chat there. Okay, so 4 rounds in and we're at a 2-2 record. So not too shabby. We managed to beat a blue-black deck, which was nice. Let's see if we can get the positive in the final round. Okay, I like what we're cooking with here. We're going to show me Devourer of Destiny. Kozilek's command is best friends with the Fleshraker. But if we play like Ancient Tomb on 1, give the Fleshraker for that is the only issue. Do I want this Kozilek's command or do I want this Lotus Petal? I think it's the K command. So we can make an uncountable Fleshraker on turn 2, but we expose ourselves to a Wasteland. I think we're just going to make a creature on turn 1. Like, it has to be Force of Will, no Daze or anything. This makes our life a lot easier moving forward. Because we can just cast spells and have a jolly good time with it. Fatal push. There's the push, sure. I'm going to play the Yavimaya out and sandbag this Cavern of Souls, so our opponent might sort of rest on something like a Daze doing the work for them. Polluted Delta from our opponent. Right, they're on basics over there. They know we have Wastelands in our deck. We've got Ponder coming in. If we need to, we can try and Kozilek's command a 1-drop if our opponent plays one. They did not. Let's play this on Eldrazi. Get our little Mycospawn friend doing some work here. This probably gets us the Eye of Ugin. A very fair and well-balanced Magic the Gathering card, no doubt. And then we can pass. Next turn, we can deploy the Devourer of Destiny. We can do some big Kozilek's commands. The world is very much at our fingertips here. Go ahead, opponent, and brainstorm. The Fatal Push in the main deck suggests our opponent is probably on a more tempo-oriented build rather than Reanimator. Goodbye, Eye of Ugin. Eldrazi Temple. Attack with our Mycospawn here. Temple and pass. We'll see what we're doing with the Kozilek's command. Maybe we're going to be killing a creature. Maybe we're going to be removing something in the graveyard if they try and Entomb Reanimate. We'll find out. I'm probably just going to be making some spawns and drawing some cards. Or drawing a card and doing some scrying. But we'll see. I'm going to play around days. Alright, so on a stack, could have something like a Force of Negation. If they're that sort of flavour of deck. Alright, we've got a Brainstorm. They're looking. Days that's in their hand, not good enough here. Crack in the Misty Rainforest. We're going to see another Brainstorm. Black, black. Orcish Bowmasters. Okay. We only draw one card from this, so it isn't the end of the world for us. I do like a Fleshraker here. How much mana do we have is the question. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we could play Fleshraker into Devourer. That feels pretty good, doesn't it? And then we have the One Ring on top as well. I don't want the One Ring in this situation. I do quite like the ability to draw a bunch of cards. Okay, so I don't want a second Devourer. So they're going to pick out one of our guys. So we sacrifice this so they don't get the Orc Army to grow. So we go cast this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we can still cast this. They can counterspell this, but we still get the trigger, which is the main thing. Black Removal is going to struggle to kill this guy unless they've got some like main deck Shoot the Sheriff type cards. Because Fatal Push is do not hit 7 drops. I'll tell you that much. Underground Sea from our opponent. Go for the Throats. And they're prioritising the Fleshraker over the Devourer. That is interesting. Because they probably have fewer removal spells that can hit the Devourer compared to the Fleshraker. A Murktide Regent. Kind of wish we had that extra Devourer now. Okay, I think our plan involves playing the One Ring. I'm going to keep up the Cavern in case we draw the thing we want to play here. Last Zone. That's probably not going to be doing very much for us, is it? You're not keeping that Devourer. Is going to come back to bite us, I think. A Psychic Frog. Okay. A Nile Spellbomb. We don't care about that one. So Psychic Frog can grow this Murktide Regent, so it can basically kill us next turn. Alright, I think we're activating. No, we got nothing. They just come in for lethal and we die. Okay. Another blue-black tempo matchup. And another failure. Okay, so let's get these Wastescape Battlemages in. I like those more than the Heralds End. We've been doing that an awful lot here. Do I like Dismembers? I think we have to have them purely because of Harbinger of the Seas. And then we're probably getting rid of... Yeah, I'm not really liking this One Ring very much. I'm going to take out the Nulldrifter there. And try this. All lands. We're not keeping this one. I'm not really enjoying this one, but it does have our basic. We just put back a Lotus Petal here is fine. And maybe we just get to ruin our opponent's day with this Chalice on 1. It's not great though. We are prioritizing having a stable mana base. Maybe we get to take like 3 cards out of our opponent's hand with this Chalice. Engineered Explosives. X equals 0. Okay. And a Wasteland. So we do have some play still here. We could take this out so they never get to activate it. I think that is worth doing here. Is it worth spending a Lotus Petal on? It is now that we have a forest. Get out of here, Explosives. Okay, so our opponent is very unlikely to be able to play any spells next turn. So we will get to start making inroads in our opponent's life total. Probably just going to go for a Surveil land here. A Dismember. I'll play out this Wastes. And we'll continue the Grizzly Bear Beats. I do like that some sort of horrible entity from another realm that looks pretty gross is the same strength as just a good old Grizzly Bear. That's what we'd love to see. Don't mess with bears. That's the motto of this channel, perhaps. Do not mess with bears. Okay, rambling over and done with. Let's play our forest and bash for 2. So we're pretty insulated from Harbinger of the Seas, but we don't have any cards that do stuff. So our opponent is not making a mistake here. They are trying to put cards into their graveyard so that they can cast a Murktide Regent. That's why they're playing things into the Chalice here. Murktide Regent is going to be pretty strong against us as well. We're going to need another Battle Mage to deal with it. So they can play the Murktide this turn. It just feels so easy being the Tempo deck into Eldrazi. Yikes. Harbinger of the Seas. Okay, we don't actually care about that one. Well, am I happy to trade? I think I'm happy to trade here. Alright, another Ponder into the bin. It's going to be a large Murktide Regent coming in. There it is. One bigger than I can deal with. Okay. Thought-Knot Seer. So we can cast the Thought-Knot Seer. Apparently has one card. What do you got? Let's take a Psychic Frog. Let's attack with our Wastescape Battlemage. They're not going to block here because we're just showing Dismember. Oh wow, we're getting the block here. Kill this. Oh wow, that exchange went incredibly well for us. Wow, I can't believe they blocked there. I'm blocking a Thought-Knot Seer maybe, but... Alright, they're bouncing this, that lets them draw a card. But if they can't deploy it... Okay, they did deploy it. I was going to say, if they can't deploy it, we immediately get to play out. And so now our opponent is ahead in the race, but we're about to make a 4-4 again. This comes in with no counters on. They're going to play this Brazen Borrower. That's going to be a 4-turn clock. We have a 3-turn clock, but if we turn our clock sideways, then their Harbinger gets to turn sideways. So we need to draw another threat so we can attack with our 4-4 whilst holding back something. A Dismember. It's not really where I want it to be. We probably have to Dismember the Borrower. As sad as that is. You counter spell for this and we die? No, they did not. Okay. A Once Upon a Time. Allow me to cast this. Oh my lord. None of these things are what I want. Okay, we just have to hold back. We don't want to just get randomly punched by a Orcish Bowmasters for lethal. A Wasteland that doesn't do anything underneath their own Harbinger. Still lands. Why? Why all the lands? If our opponent was a red deck, I would not be playing out the lands because of Price of Progress. But they are not a red deck. They're just straight up blue-black. This is what happens when... we're obviously just flooding out and having a bad time, but our opponent's probably got a bunch of stuff trapped under this Chalice, so we're both just looking at each other. It won't take much to break this game open. That's a pretty good one. Oh my. Kozilek's Command. You know what's really cool about this is that we only have one colourless source. So this is one of the spells that we can draw that we can't cast. So we have to concede this game and the match, and that is the League. Alright. How did we fare? Let's have a little look at our matches. So these are our matches. We split some games up here. We did alright into the Reanimator deck. It was the Tempo deck. The blue-black Tempo deck that really was our downfall. We just couldn't really beat the blue-black Tempo deck, which is obviously something to be very concerned about. So how do I feel about this list? Well, let's have a little look at the meta from the previous Eternal weekend in Asia. So this is the results of that tournament in terms of win rates, decks versus each other. So if we look at Eldrazi Stompy, it did have a good win rate overall in 54%, but the Reanimator matchup was okay. Obviously, the Mirror, we can ignore that one. Blue-black Tempo, no good at all, right? 40% isn't great. 50% into Mono Red Prism, that's fine. I'm surprised it's 50% given the power of Blood Moon, but there we are. Losing into Grindstone, not great. Losing into Mystic Forge, not great. Good into blue-white control decks, kind of irrelevant. There's not that many of them around. Sneak and Show, there's a lot more in Asia, so you're going to see less in the coming up Eternal weekends. Nardu Breakfast, kind of even. So if you look at our matchup spread, we're kind of even, and then we've got a few matchups that are looking okay at the back end, but there's only limited data on these in terms of this tournament anyway. But if you were to look at this, you'd say, well, why would I play Eldrazi? Like, it's got flat-ish matchups because what you're doing is inherently powerful, right? But having a bad matchup against blue-black Tempo, splitting the games versus Reanimator, like these are two of the most, like, outside of Reanimator, the next two most played decks are probably looking at Eldrazi Stompy and blue-black Tempo. And then maybe Mono Red Prism. So we've got 50% matchups against some of those, and then less than 50% against the other one. And like this is the order of the decks in terms of how played they were. So as you can see, we would have an okay matchup into Reanimator, and then a bad matchup into the next most played deck that isn't us, in the Mirror. And then an even matchup against Mono Red, and then a horrible matchup against Painted. So it's not looking great, is it, for this deck in terms of what it's lining up to beat. So let's talk about the list and why that might be. So you saw several opponents take us apart quite concisely with like the correct like Wastelands or being able to just take out the key things at the right time. So Eldrazi has a really high ceiling, but the floor of it, if you can disrupt your opponent in the right fashion, it becomes very difficult for any Eldrazi player to actually make roads into the game. And you saw some of our hands were a little bit clunky because we don't get the blue sculpting. We have to have good hands. Now, you could argue that if you need to win any big tournament, like an Eternal Weekend, you need to get lucky to some extent. So you need to have, some good matchups here and there. And, you need to make sure you don't get flooded and screwed too often with your mana. However, would you want to stake your whole tournament on things going that well for you in a deck like this, where the ways in which your opponents can take you out are incredibly common in the meta, right? So, Wasteland into removal, or reanimating like a big monster that's just going to be beating what we're doing. We saw how potent the Murktide Regent was. It's just a massive body that we can't really deal with. There's a lot of problems that we can run into with our deck. Now, we can just, sometimes hit someone for 20 on turn 2 with double Fleshraker nonsense because of Eye of Ugin tapping for like 8 mana in a turn. I've had that happen to me. I've done it to other people as well. It's definitely a power thing you can do. But we don't lay the pressure on super early necessarily, because if we don't have a Lotus Petal, the chances are we're not making a threat on turn 1. So we need to wait till turn 2 to make a threat. So our opponent's always going to have some amount of interaction for us available, whether that's going to be a removal spell, whether that's going to be a daze or whatever. We're not that often going to be able to go, okay, here's my Fleshraker on turn 1 or whatever. And we're very rarely going to have the mana that we're going to be able to do like a Mycospawn on turn 2 or whatever. So the problem I have with this deck is the disparity between the ceiling and the floor of this deck feels a lot higher. If you play a blue deck, the floor of what your deck can do is a lot higher than other decks, because you just get all these cantrips, right? You get to look for the things you need. You get to actually sculpt a game plan, whereas we don't get to do that. We play the things we draw, and we hope they're good enough. And sometimes they will be, and sometimes they won't be. And you can definitely layer your threats in the best way possible, but you have to play around things. So we had it a few times where, okay, what are we playing around? So we can play our lands out in this way to avoid, a Wasteland on this. But then if they do have the Wasteland, the next turn we have to then make that decision again. If they don't have the Wasteland, that's fine. Are we playing around days? Do we need to play 2 mana producing lands so that we can afford to play our Fleshraker around days on turn 2? Or are we just supposed to hold back and go even slower? And there's a lot of decisions, and maybe you play this enough that you get used to those decisions, but at the end of the day, if you're playing this deck, you're playing a deck with raw power, and you're hoping that you're just going to be able to steamroller people over, and you're not going to have the most amount of agency in how you do that. And I'm not a giant fan of doing that. And it doesn't lend itself to certain non-games either. So the way that the Eldrazi deck can create a non-game for your opponent is either via Chalice of the Void, which is increasingly not great at doing that as a prison piece. It's a speed bump more than anything these days. But it can sometimes lock some people out long enough, and that's fine, and create a non-game. And then you also have Sowing Mycospawn. If you get an early Sowing Mycospawn that you can kick, you blow up their land, you get a Wasteland, you blow up their other land, and then all of a sudden they're not playing the game. So that's kind of your non-game scenario with this deck, where you just run someone over. And there is also like a Fleshraker where you can just do a massive Fleshraker chain with chaining Kozilek's commands or the double Fleshraker start. And that is obviously very powerful too, but that is relatively easier to interact with because it's a creature and everyone's got creature removal in their decks right now. Whereas if you look at the other Stompy deck in the format, Mono Red, its non-games come from, I play a turn 1 Blood Moon, you don't ever get to play a spell this game. And I think that is a lot more powerful than the non-game we can produce here. So if I was going to play an Eternal Weekend, which unfortunately I can't this year due to financial reasons, I would probably be more inclined to play the Mono Red Stompy deck than the Eldrazi Stompy deck. Obviously, this is just a few games I've played here, and I've obviously played some other leagues, and I wasn't really a fan of this particular list. I don't like the One Ring in it very much. I understand why it's there, but the games that we're losing are generally because we are getting sort of stuck under our feet. We can't come out the gates fast enough because we're having our Wastelands pointed at us, and we're just not being able to get out of the early turns of the game. We're just sort of stuck there while our opponent generates some sort of tempo. Now, obviously, we're playing against some bad matchups today, but as we saw from the grid, there aren't any really, really good matchups for the most part, especially not among the top handful of decks. So you're going to have to work hard for your games, but you're not going to have that much choice in what work you get to do, because you do your mulligan decisions and your sequencing decisions, and that's mostly it. And I would rather play a deck with a little bit more decision making in it, and I would also rather play a deck that has more chance of creating just complete non-games for your opponent, like the Stompy deck, that is the mono-red Stompy deck that we'll be playing in this series of decks for the Eternal Weekend. So those are my thoughts on Eldrazi. I think it's a very powerful thing to be doing, and I think when it's firing on all cylinders, it's an absolute beast. But people are more used to playing against it now, and the most played card, I think it was the Consigned to Memory. I think there was over 900 copies or something out of 600 players. So you kind of get the idea that you're looking at roughly 1.5 copies per deck, per player. And obviously that's not going to be in all the non-blue decks. So you're looking at lots of blue decks with maybe 3 Consigned to Memories in the sideboard or something like that, which is a lot to contend with. That's just such a clean answer to what we're doing here. And everyone knows what Eldrazi is. They know the key pieces to hit. Like when this deck first sort of materialized after Modern Horizons 3, you could jam into a league and easy 4-1s or 5-0s, and that lasted for about a month and a half, and then it started falling off a little bit. It's a bit like when people weren't really prepared for Orcish Bowmasters, then we'll say, oh, it needs to be banned, it's too strong, and then things kind of evolved around it, and then it wasn't so scary anymore. I think that's a situation that's happened with Eldrazi, but that is partly because the best decks in the format, like the blue-black Reanimator and the blue-black Tempo, they have reasonable or good matchups into Eldrazi. And if that's the most played deck in the format, why do I want to play a deck that is coin flip or worse to blue-black decks? And the answer to that is, I don't think you do. Alright, sorry for that long ramble there, but I had some interesting thoughts that I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel out and doesn't cost you anything. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.